Hello and welcome to Something to Write Home About. Today we have an interview recorded in 2011 with Burch and Zack of Jimmy Eat World talking about all of their albums from their self-titled debut all the way through to Invented. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to the channel for more interviews coming soon. Okay, so going through the albums one by one, how do you feel about them now and your favourite songs? So the debut album, the Jimmy Eat World self-titled, which you went on, how do you feel about that? Looking back 16 years later.
I think it's, for where we were at that point in time, we were still fairly a young band, and I feel like really, I think at the time we did a really good job. I mean, it's not really... it's a style that we're not really doing that much anymore, but I think within that style, I think you can kind of see, you can make some connections to like what we've done and where we are now. Yeah, I mean, I think probably, probably my favorite song on that album is Reason 346.
Okay, moving on then, Static Prevails was your introduction. How do you feel about that? Obviously, a major label debut. It's still some of the fans. It's their favourite album. How about that for you now?
It's real exciting, having that opportunity to go into, a professional studio and have a lot of time. Whereas I think what I know with the previous recording, they didn't have very much time. How long were you in the studio?
Yeah, we weren't in the studio for more than a few days and just
right. But with Static Prevails, we got to go to California. We met, hooked up with Mark Trombino, and spent a good time in the studio and got really deep with, making the songs and trying different things.
I feel like with Static Prevails, I think we were still trying to figure out some things, like what kind of band we wanted to be. At that point in time, I think we were still kind of, I think to a certain degree we always just kind of follow our own noses, but I think really then it was kind of like we didn't know exactly how to execute what we wanted, and we kind of, I think we, if you listen to, like when I listen to Static Prevails, I just hear like a less experienced band, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just, part of being less experienced, there's some really good stuff that comes along with that, just sort of, but I think in terms of like making records, I don't really feel like we really like kind of said, okay, this is what we want to do and this is how we're going to do it until we hit Clarity. Clarity was kind of like we've been through this before, we have a little bit of better idea of like what we want to do, and Static Prevails is just a little bit more of like a raw kind of like, let's just do it and think about it later, whereas Clarity was a little bit more intentional. I think we knew what we wanted before.
How about you for Clarity?
For Clarity, yeah, exactly what he said. Having the experience of doing Static Prevails, you realize that there's a lot of things you can do, and again, being with Mark Trombino, it was we just got deeper into that relationship, and ideas were flowing. It was a good experience.
I think with Clarity, where we were like in terms with our relationship with our record label kind of influenced that album a lot, because at that point in time, Static Prevails had kind of come and gone, and we sort of learned real quickly that we weren't really all that important to the label. And so I think when we were making Clarity, we were making it in the mindset of, we'll probably never get to do this again, so let's do whatever the fuck we want. And let's, like, if we have an idea, let's just, like, go for it and do it, because we're probably not going to have a chance to be in a nice studio or to rent, like, I think that was the first album where we had, like, professional strings on the record, and we ordered all these percussion instruments and did all this different stuff, and it was kind of like, we went for it, like, we just really went for it, and any kind of idea we had, we tried it, and I think part of it was kind of just the really kind of savoring, okay, we're probably never going to get this chance again, and I think that, it influenced the album a lot.
How do you feel about, obviously last year you did a tour revisiting Clarity. How was that going back and like 10 years on from the original album to then play it live in full?
It was really fun and it was really strange, you know, because when that record was out, when we were touring for that record, like no one really came to the shows very much. Like we weren't playing for very big crowds, and so to take that record and play it, put it out again and play it for people, and it was interesting, you know. It's, you know, I think the thing that stuck out in my mind was that at the time we were making Clarity, like we really had no way of measuring what its impact would be on our fans, and a lot of those fans weren't even fans yet, you know. And so I think for us, we were just sort of under the radar, and you know, I think we felt like we were still under the radar making Clarity, and so bringing their album back out to the fans, you know, after, you know, a long period of time when we put out Bleed American and had, you know, sort of more commercial success and had a broader audience. It was really strange to play Clarity for, you know, like we're playing Clarity in front of like 2,500 people packed in New York City. Like when Clarity came out, we might have been able to draw like 200 people, maybe, you know. And so it's just, it was really fun and a really great tour, but it was a little bit strange as well.
What's your favorite song off the album?
Clarity? I'm going to say Goodbye Sky Harbor because it's the freshest in my mind because we've been playing it lately. And also another thing with the Clarity tour, we got songs together for live that we had never, you know, performed, you know, before live. And especially Sky Harbor, we tried to do a more accurate representation of the recording on the album, which was a lot of fun to dig in and figure out how to do that. And you know, a big help of that is technology. Jim has a good loop station that, you know, makes the layering possible at the end, and it's you know, I think it was a lot of fun getting that together, and it's a lot of fun doing it still.
Okay, Bleed American, how was it recording that without having a label already in place? And then, you know, because at the time when you recorded that, you didn't have a label, and you know, you're all working day jobs to try and get the funding.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever kind of a feeling of, is this ever going to be released, or was it kind of like refreshing and freeing because of you didn't have to answer to anyone, you could just go and make the album you wanted to make?
It was very refreshing and freeing to make Bleed American with no label, no other real business associates at all, and it was, you know, just the four of us guys and Mark Trombino in the studio, and you know, doing what we wanted to do for us, you know, and for our fans, because we knew there were fans out there. We didn't know how they were going to hear it or what conduit would take it to them, but we knew that, you know, they would hear it, and so we were really excited to be that free to make exactly what we wanted at the time.
Were you shocked by the success of the album? Because obviously it took you, and it took, obviously as well, from that, a lot of people then revisited Clarity, and that's how a lot of people discovered Clarity and Static Prevails.
Yeah, I think we were really surprised that, I mean, I think for us, we've always been a band that tried not to have too high of expectations. I think we learned that really early, you know. You start to expect a lot of things and then you'll be disappointed. So for us, doing Bleed American was like a sort of a second chance at, you know, not only making more music, but you know, there's a whole part of being a band that a lot of people don't really sort of pick up on, and it's kind of like the business part of being a band. And in a weird way, like, we were able to kind of restart our band with a group of people that we were able to choose that fit us a lot better.
And having the experiences with Static Prevails and Clarity and people we had worked with on the business side before, we learned a lot through that experience. So we were really fortunate to be able to have that opportunity to reset, and knowing what to look for and, you know, how to work as a band, you know, in the business end of it, you know, helped us choose the people that, and we're still with, you know, those people today. So
okay,
it's really, really cool.
Futures, you moved away from working with Mark to working with Jill Norton. What was the decision, or was it just, you know, a fresh set of ears who hadn't worked with you before?
I think it's a combination of there were some scheduling problems. We started making features with Mark initially, and then we weren't ready to make a record. I think we kind of realized that partway in with Mark, and it just sort of it kind of ended badly, not necessarily because of Mark, but it just sort of, it was frustrating for everyone involved, I think, because we had spent like 3 months in the studio and we didn't really have anything done, and we're leaving the studio and we weren't finished, and so it's like the first time that's ever really happened for us. So Mark had a scheduling conflict that he had to continue with another band, and you know, it was sort of a difficult situation for everybody. But I think, and you know, another part of it was that I think we needed to kind of, I mean, that was our, you know, that was our sort of our third record with Mark. Bleed American was our third record in a row with Mark. Plus we'd done other recordings with him, and so it's kind of been, it was like a long relationship that I felt like we, you know, I think at the end of the day, I think we all sort of collectively felt like working with someone new would be good, you know, getting a new perspective in, because I think when you all have the same team and the same people creatively, things can kind of get, you can kind of get in a rut, you know, and Gil came in and really kind of shook things up in the way that we made records and the way that we prepared to make records, to make a record, and Gil is a very different kind of person than Mark, so I think just having a different personality in the room and he was like the perfect person that we needed at that point in time. Like, Gil was amazing. So, and you know, I think Futures was by far the hardest record that we had to make. It was the most difficult, it was the most trying.
Was it pressure because of obviously the success of American?
It was the first, it was like we had to learn to be a different kind of band, you know, in a weird way. Like, we had to learn to deal with like the expectation of there's people waiting for a record, where we'd never dealt with that feeling before. So yeah, I think you know, and then right in the middle of Futures, our label got sold and got, you know, so there was a lot of weird shit going on during that time. So you know, and but at the end of the day, I think like Futures is, I think Futures is probably my favorite record.
Okay, Chase This Light, you produced it, but you had Butch Vig as a kind of executive producer. Mm. How was it working with him, or was it weird having someone overseeing it but not directly involved in the kind of day-to-day recording?
I thought it was really good working with Butch. I think part of making Chase This Light was sort of an experiment to see if we could make a record in Arizona in our studio, you know. It was a sort of one step in the direction of getting to a place where we could just more rely on ourselves and our own instinct. And it was a blast to make it. You know, it was really fun. It was like the total opposite of making Futures. You know, it just was a good time. It was totally chill and relaxed. And I don't know. I think that it was I think that kind of, and you can kind of hear that in music, I think, like it feels more, a little bit upbeat and more like maybe relaxed, and but I think Butch was great. He was able to kind of give us some outside perspective and not be there all the time, you know. I think you know, it was good to have Butch along, because I think it was like a safety. Butch was kind of like a safety net for us, and we were the ones up on the high wire, but Butch was still there to kind of like make sure, you know, shit didn't get off track. So
okay, on to the current album then, Invented. How do you feel going back? Obviously you hadn't worked with Mark for a couple of albums, then go back and work with him again?
For Invented, we decided to again, we wanted to do the recording at our studio in Arizona that we had built up, and we wanted someone else to be, you know, there for us as well, but we still wanted to, you know, be the mainly the creative process is coming from the four of us in our studio, and but we still wanted that outside ear, outside perspective, and thinking about that and how we wanted to do it, and not having someone in the studio every day. So they also needed to be good with, you know, computers and Pro Tools, and that's Mark. He's a genius with, you know, the computing aspect of recording, and he also has his own studio at his house in California. So it's kind of like, and you know, we have the previous experience with him. We get along really well, and we're big fans of what he does as well, and so it was kind of a natural choice to ask him to join us again, and so we would make the songs in Arizona, get them, you know, as far as we could get them, and then send that over to Mark, and he would, I mean, sometimes he would totally rearrange the structure of the song and send that back, and like it would flip us out because it was so different, but you know, we would take parts of those ideas and, you know, sometimes not use all of it, and just kind of like evolve the songs that way by bouncing them back and forth, you know, between his studio and our studio. But we, you know, we always stayed in our studio, and again, we're very comfortable there, very relaxed. You're not living in a hotel room, you're going home every night to your family, so I think you can hear that as well. It's very, you know, comfortable sounding.
Yeah, I mean, with Chase This Light, there was, you know, we had an engineer, we had an engineer that was with us all the time in the studio, we had an executive producer in Burch that was there, and then we had also a separate guy, Chris Lord-Alge, to mix, you know. So we had kind of like these two roles, like the sort of co-producer and mixer spread out among different people. And with Mark, it was like he was because of what he can do and his ability, he kind of could take all of those roles on as one person. And you know, he's kind of the, you know, one of the people, you know, one of the few people we know who can do that, and he's probably the only one that like we trust, you know, creatively and musically to do that, you know. So he was great.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.